Emmett was 14 years old and stocky, weighing about 150 pounds and standing nearly 5 feet. It was the summer of 1955 when we visited Mamie in Chicago. Emmett, curious boy, always wanted me to tell him stories about the Delta, the Mississippi Delta. I lived in Money, on the other side of North Glenwood, with his cousins Wheeler and Curtis. We had a church there, too. Now, his cousins was just about Emmett's age, and they were excited at the thought of Emmett visiting Money for the rest of the summer. While in Chicago, we just found out that Lamar Smith was gunned down in front of the Brookhaven courthouse for organizing a black protest rally. 3 white suspects was arrested, but soon released. This made Mamie very nervous about all the talk of Emmett going to the South with me. She was planning a family vacation to Nebraska to see some relatives in Omaha, but Emmett didn't want to go. He had his mind set on the Mississippi Delta. So, before we departed, Mamie repeatedly reminded and quizzed Emmett that Money, Mississippi was no Chicago, and he was going to have to act like these two places were different worlds, and he needed to know how to act in front of white folks at all times. Emmett was always shaking his head yes. Another thing, he couldn't say some words without stuttering, so Mamie, on some words, taught Emmett to whistle before he speaks to cut down on the stuttering. Bad idea for the Delta. But when they came to get my Emmett, tried to tell him it was all a big mistake and that boy didn't know no better. I begged Mr. Roy and Milan to let Emmett go, but they don't listen to no old preacher man. In the Lord, my soul been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul been anchored in the Lord. Before I'd live in hell one day, my soul been anchored in the Lord. I'd sing and pray myself away. My soul been anchored in the Lord. Gonna preach and teach and never stop. My soul been anchored in the Lord until I reach that mountaintop. My soul been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul been anchored in the Lord.